Welcome, fam. Our kids are swimming in a sea of materialism. They are bombarded by ads that make them want everything from cars to phones to clothes to shoes to sneakers and everything else. What is it that we are teaching them that helps them free them from the consumerist trap, sets them up for a life of wealth and health and happiness? We're going to talk about that today on Freedom Friday. This is Freedom Friday, and you are still not free. Welcome, friends and family. It is another Freedom Friday. We are back after a long time. It's Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you will be freer after an hour with Sharif El Mekki and myself. Here's my brother, the one and only legend, Sharif El Mekki, educator of all, school turnarounder, gap closer, jet setter, man on every stage in every place with pictures with everyone from Gandhi to Obama. How are you doing, brother?
Good, man. I miss this. I miss us. I miss you,
No,
guys. It's great to be back, man.
it really is.
Yeah. I miss us. I miss us. So
Fridays,
this
these Freedom
time.
Fridays for me are a learning experience and a chance to kind of exchange, and not by myself, like sitting in my room in my house by myself, reading
Mhm.
something, going, "Wow, I wonder what other people would think about
Yeah,
this."
yeah,
And you're always such a good, level-headed partner and know so much about things that it's good to bounce these ideas, off of you. And today's story topic, materialism with our young
Mhm.
people, came to me after watching a YouTube video. And the first thing I thought was, I wonder what Sharif thinks about, not about the subject itself, but what we should be teaching young people. Like, how would we teach? And that's
Mhm.
why you come into my mind oftentimes when I think of these things, because I think about them as like, that's an interesting idea. And then I think as a parent, man, what am I doing with my kids? And then I think, if I had to teach a lesson on this, like if I had to put together a lesson and teach kids, how would I structure it and
Mhm.
what would I want to get out of it? So can I set it up for you a little bit?
Yeah. Please do.
All
Please
right.
do.
So the video that I saw, that really kind of captured or got me thinking about materialism and what are we teaching our kids, actually came from an interesting spot. I'm gonna put my screen up here and see if I can share my screen. Uh, Here we go. So it's 50 Cent.
Okay.
So 50 Cent's 25, 26-year-old son has been complaining for a long time that his dad has not given him some of the riches that he had, right?
Mhm.
And, as 50 Cent is a very famous entertainer who has gone from the rough and tumble of New York, his own personal story, being raised by a mom who was addicted to drugs, and they were on their own, and he was shot 9 times. These are a part of the lore of him. And he didn't just become famous. He took over the game in hip hop and made investments in things like Smart Water early in his career and other things that just put him well ahead of other entertainers. So he had a sense of hustle in him that wasn't just about selling records. And
Mhm.
now he's on Forbes, Forbes, one of the most richest people in the world list. This isn't just a rapper anymore. This is an entertainer.
Right. Mhm.
So his son, I'm going to play just a short clip of this, but his son has been complaining about him since he was young, right? And
Is
I'm
this
just
a
going to
new
go.
theme now? Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, this dude made it into. I think this dude was the originator of the "my daddy didn't give me any of the
Right.
money" type of thing. But
Okay.
but I'm gonna play it quickly to see, and let me know if you can or can't
Now,
hear this. You might not be
6,700 a
able to
month
hear
to
this, so
I
let's
rebuild your
see.
can
life.
hear it. I can hear it.
6,700 a month.
Okay. And I can't buy stocks?
Listen to what I'm saying to you.
Right.
6,700 a month, right? 6,700 a month in the state of New York City. You do the math.
Oh, I done the math. I've been in child support, bro. I went to jail for it. So I said, so hold
Okay,
on.
cool.
67, hold
6,700 a
on.
month, right? Okay,
6,700 a month, right?
You're talking about a Ford Lister. Hold on, wait, listen. You're talking about somebody that has problems with everybody. You can't just live in any neighborhood. $81K is not a substantial a lot of money.
Hold on.
You can't just live anywhere.
And if he's contributing $6,700, that means your mom's got the other half. It ain't just for him to take care of you. She got to take care of you. $700. Where's her $6,700 to go with?
It's $6,700 a month.
Now y'all got 12, 1,300. Now 13,000 a month.
Oh my! All right, hold on. Yo, choke. This is where you get it. This is where it goes down a bad path, brother. This is what I'm trying to tell you, bro. Yo, bro, 6,700. If I told you right now, right, you got to start your life over right now with 6,700 a month and rebuild your life.
Yes.
Can you do it?
With 6,700, I guess.
You have.
Okay, I want to stop right there and just say, just let's add some context to this. 50 Cent, when this kid was young, 50 Cent was paying child support, and the kid's portion of that was almost $7,000 a month.
As a baby, like receiving it as a baby.
As a kid, yeah. So this is a kid walking around school with $7,000 a month in his pocket. And, you know, some
maybe not in his pocket, but.
Well, his mom got the rest of it. So that literally was his portion of it.
I thought that was the child support.
No. Well, as part of the child support, that was his portion of the
That was his allowance, basically. That was his
allowance of the child support. Right.
Wait.
And
so this
is
okay. Start over.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, let's round $300, $7,000 allowance. That was part of a larger child support thing. It's like, hey, here's the child support, and part of it you have to give your son allowance.
Yeah, that was his portion. The mom got the other portion. So it was the kid and his mom, and the mom got her portion, and the kid's portion was $6,700 a month, and that's what he grew up on. But he had this very famous, world famous father who was in the millions, right?
Right.
So his thing was there's one story where 50 Cent is talking to the mom, and the mom is talking to 50 Cent about the son, and she's like, yeah, you know, there's this boy at his school who has 120 pairs of sneakers. And he doesn't even have 20 pair right now. And he doesn't know why he doesn't have 20. So he wanted literally 50 Cent to buy him 20 pairs of sneakers for his birthday. And 50 was laughing on the phone. He's like, you better tell this dude, what is wrong with him? Like he because there's another kid at school that has more pairs of sneakers than him. He thinks he deserves 20 pairs of sneakers, right? So there's this entitlement, affluenza, not much industry, not sense of trying to make the most of it himself on his own. And yeah, his portion. So the question he asked at the end of that, he asked the guy, if you had to rebuild your life on just $7,000 a month, could you do it? Right?
The guy's like, yeah.
The dude is like, yes, I could literally do that.
As a grown man, not even count like as a high school kid. Like that's I'm glad you framed it, because I thought it was. I was like, I'm sorry, man. This is hilarious. Like,
isn't that the craziest thing? So
I thought that was the child support, whatever, blah blah blah.
No, he's 67.
Which is still not it's not a little bit.
It's not a little bit. And I get, and he's saying, well, in New York, you can't live on that, right?
You're in high school.
Yeah, you're in high school. Exactly.
High school. I don't want to hear that you can't live. You got $7,000 allowance. Talk about I can't live off of that. No, the lifestyle you're portraying, you can't be on the rich and glamorous maybe with 7,000.
Right.
But you definitely have but according to most measurements in New York or anywhere else, you have a very glamorous lifestyle at $7,000
most of America
allowance.
So here's where the story gets into the teachable moment and the lessons. So what 50 Cent has said about this several times is, I grew up rough and tumble, so I don't know what my son's life is like. I'm me and he's him. I don't know what it's like to grow up as this kid who has had all this opportunity or whatnot.
Right.
But I don't understand it. So when he was 13 years old, 50 Cent is in the business of investing in things. That's his teachable moment. So he, at 13 years old, told Marquise, which is his son, listen, I will help you start a sneakerhead store, and this is before, because 50 Cent
At
has
13.
business people at 13. So 50 Cent has business people, and they do all the market research for you, whatnot. This is how he made his investments. So the way he was going to teach his son was, if you're into sneakers so much and you think, and that's your passion or whatnot, cool. We will set up a sneaker store, an online sneaker store, and this is ahead of the curve. This was before that became a big deal.
Yeah,
So
I mean, this could have been Ankrum and Dr. Simmons' client. Like,
exactly. And this is, I'm glad you mentioned that, because Ankrum and Cole and all the others who go to some of these sites where they get their sneakers, the ones where they are, you don't just get them, you have to be in contests to get them and all that. 50 Cent was thinking about that before those sites existed.
Before it existed, yeah.
So he would have been at the head of the curve, right? So this is him right here. This is a story about him. They were planning to open the store, and the son just wouldn't do any work. He just wouldn't follow through on any of it. And, after a couple of years, he just had put no effort into it or whatnot. So it was all of his own doing. He just wanted the free stuff.
He
he didn't want the hustle.
Just hand it to him.
Now, this is where this gets even crazier. Sneakers generated $70 billion last year. Sneakers generated $70 billion last year. Black retailers saw little of that, right? But who is buying them? Black culture and influence made athleisure a phenomenon, but only a handful of Black retail owners are benefiting from the trend. So all these people in our network that you and I both know, who have all these boxes of sneakers in their house, and you see them, they got a different pair every time you see them. They are literally the captives of an audience that are generating $700 billion. That Black people, that's $700 billion. Great. So people like 50 Cent's son, who thought he should get 20 pairs for his birthday, are basically the cattle, right? And he was trying to teach him a lesson on don't be the cattle, right? Be the cattle herder, right? If you want, I can teach you how to get 20 pair. Own the damn store that sells them, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's the way
you get 20 pair, yeah.
So $70 billion industry, and we are teaching our kids to dress well. We're teaching them to never get a scuff on their shoes, and if they get a scuff, they need another pair. Don't get a crease in your Air Force Ones, or else you'll need another pair. And these are $150, $160, $700 dollar shoes when they're once they become classic or whatever. Once they they evaluate. So it is somewhat of a business more than, do you want to be a consumer, a materialist or whatnot? I just want to go to one more thing and just say, here's an example. This Black mom was criticized for buying her kids a vending machine for Christmas. This is in Black Enterprise. This is one of my favorite stories a couple of years ago. It was this a year more ago. This mom was in the news and all over Facebook because she had bought her kids a straight up vending machine for Christmas and stuff to put in that vending machine or whatnot. Now, when I first read this, I didn't read the criticism part. I just thought, that's a brilliant idea. I should find vending machines are about $600 to $1,000, right?
Put them in the right place, though.
Put them in the right place. And really, honestly, it's not hard to put them in the right place. They got snacks in them. America loves snacks. Yeah. The snack industry is bigger than like Americans are fat and they love snacks. There's two things that that you can count on in this world. So buying your child a $1,200 MacBook versus buying them a vending machine is two different lessons. Those are two very different lessons. And one of those lessons, Apple just makes the money off of you because Apple got your money. Nike makes the money off of you. The other lesson is you make the money off of you and build on it. So I want to stop there and say, this is what made me think, as a parent, what am I doing? And as teachers, what are we doing to get young people to understand it's not about buying, it's about owning. And the first thing you own is yourself. Don't be a patsy. How would I put that into a lesson, Sharif?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, it's economics. But I would start off with, Jawanza Kunjufu said, a while ago that, if you live in a capitalistic society, but you're not teaching your children what capitalism is, that means you're setting them up. That means they'll just be walking through a world, right? Like that's like, someone traveling through, an area that has a whole lot of traps and tricks, but you can navigate it, but you don't teach them, right? Like they when kids play video games and they like to get from level 1 to level 2, they're making sure that they are understanding, and Cole calls it the code, right? Like they understand, hey, and they're getting all the download and information of how do I navigate, get past the dragon and get to, whatever it is. And I'm sure somebody's chuckling because that ain't the games that they be playing. But I'm, when I think of game, I'm thinking Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like, how do you navigate the space? And so Juwanza Kunjufu is like, it's capitalistic. This is all built on capitalism, but you don't have a single lesson to your child about what capitalism is. It's like, then you're not fully educating them, right? And at school, at Shoemaker, we had an economics class for our high school students. We have financial literacy and economics as courses because we wanted them to have at least a nascent level of understanding of this is how they built all of this. Here's how you can use it, manipulate it, but this is also how they'll trick and trap you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Send a kid to college without understanding what interest is and what that credit card means, right? Like that free call, and they'll get you like, you're homesick. Hey, if you fill out this application, you can have a free card to call home. You have a phone. Back then, they would trick folks with phone cards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now looking at interest being 28%. So like teaching a kid like, yo, if they see that, look at this. What they're saying is every dollar is going to be inflation, personal inflation on what your dollar is worth at this point. It's going to be worthy for them, but not worth much for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you're buying things that's going to depreciate. And what does it mean when something depreciates, right? Like if we're not teaching our kids this, and these aren't like, a lot of times people look at this stuff like, oh, that's super complicated, blah, blah, blah. It's not complicated, right? We just have to understand like this is an important part of educating someone that's living in this country that is the prey often. They're the prey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Stop setting our children up to be prey. Like that, like have that first. I don't want my child to be prey of a $70 billion industry.
Right. And it's almost like you can't get away from it because, like, listen, I was anti-Jordan for a long time. I don't mean the man, I mean the shoe.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can remember when shoes first went over $100, and I thought that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I remember thinking this to myself back then. This is a long time ago.
This
is a long time ago.
Right? I remember when I first saw it. I'm like, how can a shoe cost $100? Like I couldn't wrap my mind around it.
And at some point, I remember reading a thing that it was like $8 to make them. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are shoes they're selling to you for $100 that are being made in sweatshops where people are being paid pennies a day to to make them. This is back then. I don't know what they've done since, but I remember reading that thinking $8 and you fools are paying $100 walking around because you got some basketball player's name on them who basically said he never wanted to get any social justice issues because Republicans buy shoes too. And I thought, what a gross black capitalism cycle of things. He's enriching himself, slapping his names on something that people are literally starting to kill themselves for because now they're worth so much. They're not worth, but they are valued at $100. Mm-hmm. If you're walking through the wrong neighborhood with pair, I mean, people forget this. There were years in which people were literally getting jacked up for their shoes, right?
I remember that was the first time I saw someone actually killed during, I didn't see it, but someone killed during a robbery, right? Because before, it was like people they might stick you up, they might take your stuff, but you would live, and I remember they shot the guy anyway.
Yeah.
And it was over some Jordans, and I was just like, yo, this is a different level of depravity.
Do you think part of the problem with maybe teaching this, let's say you're an educator, not a parent. As a parent, you can teach your kids whatever you want. So as a parent, I can say to my kids, like, listen, we participate in an economy and it's not philosophical. It's actually literally, we participate in an economy. This is how we bring groceries home. I could teach them things about ethical spending. Don't just spend everywhere. Think about who you're, spending your money with. Does it further some of the things in life that you want? Like this is, I grew up, my parents always looked for a black insurance agent. They always looked for a black doctor. They always looked for, because they knew that I don't have all the power in the world, but if I'm spending, That's some power, right? Consumer power is some power. So I can teach my kids that. But now if I'm an educator going into a classroom and I want to teach a lesson on materialism, consumerism, and capitalism, now we get into the problem of I might have political ideas that you don't have, right? So like, am I going to teach about Marxist ideas and capitalist ideas? And like, how am I going to teach this thing? Like, there's some people, when you get into materialism, they're like, we shouldn't be buying any of this. Like, you know, they're kind of like you out there making their own honey. Talking about, I ain't buying no corporate honey.
They feed their bees sugar water and keep them in a box. They don't even fly around. I'm not.
Yeah, we're not gonna fly in this capitalist air. We don't want bees fly. I mean, you know, like, I mean, to some extent, I have known people in my life where they believe very heartily in recycling things, buy local, don't buy global. They avoid anything made by Unilever or Kraft, you know, big companies and all that stuff, like these big corporations. So it's part of their ethic. It's part of their spending ethic. But as a teacher, I mean, do you have to take a side in capitalism if you're going to teach this lesson?
The beauty about teaching is you don't have to, like, there are levels to it. Like, yeah, you can say like, hey, this is what I do. This is what I believe. And I believe in sharing and being transparent with students. And look, there's plenty of things I would believe in, or it could be as simple as, yo, KRS-One is better than that trash you're listening to. Oh, no, it's not. Right? Like, it could be easy as that. Or it can also be like, I can teach about materialism without saying a word about materialism. I can, you know, because it goes back
to more about this. How do you do that?
If I'm teaching a level, if I'm teaching, I think this is a part of, like, the best teachers tie teaching to the reality of a child, to the world that they live in. It helps them understand. So it goes from theory, a theoretical concept, to applied science. So if I'm teaching about interest, right, I'm teaching about materialism, right? Because the kid at the end might say like, yo, that's whack. Yo, that's oppressive, right? If I'm teaching a child like, hey, if I give you $1, but you have to return 10 to me, I'm teaching them about the system, right? But then I'm applying, here's the mathematics behind that. Like, what's the difference between $1 and $10? How much of a markup is that? What's the percentage higher than that, right? And then I'm just saying like, okay, the word problem that you bring about, you're sharing with them like, hey, you needed $1 to get across town. Someone gave it to you. You desperately need it. And of course, $1, you just play with the numbers to make it reality to their real world, right? What does an Uber cost to get from Philly to King of Prussia, you know, or SEPTA, that's the transportation. What does it cost to get from point A to point B? Something they do every day. And you don't have it. You lost your money. And now you have to get it, but you have to get home.
What would you do?
What would you do? And then your homie says, oh no, I got you, fam, I got you. Or your teacher like, oh, I got you, don't even worry about it. But then you got a letter that says, hey, there's a 26% interest rate on that $2 that you use to get home. Right? So you're applying it to something that you needed to do. You felt like, I have to get home. And now here's the kickback. And if you don't, here's the ramifications, right? Like, all of this could be done, and you can be done, you know, not as glib as I'm doing it, but like a well thought out lesson plan that's teaching about interest, which is a mathematical principle, right? The decimal, right, was something Americans struggle with, right? Percentages and decimals and fractions, all of this can be tied in, but applied to a kid that has to do something. And not just like, oh, I want to buy a bag of chips. Like, nah, something that's more pressing, more, you know what I mean? Like more, you know, heartfelt than, oh yeah, you wanted to buy a bag of chips. Like, nah, you actually had to get home to take care of something, or
like having to solve a real problem,
a real world problem,
a real world problem.
And then that, and mostly, and I would say sometimes like the vast majority of the time you can do this. You can do this in some kind of way to tie it in. And that's the point. There's so many people who are teaching that have no concept about real world, or they're just picking up the book. A textbook company doesn't care about real world problems for the most part. They're not connected. It's like, all right, here are the things, here's the standards. All right, we're going to create a bunch of problems. so far from you that it has nothing to do with what you your live reality in. But suppose we're doing this, but we also have just this understanding of a Black child in America needs to know this. And I'm adding that. That's not what textbooks are saying, like, yo, Black children in America need to know X, Y, Z. They're not thinking about that. They're like, how do we make this money? But as a teacher, my job is to take the standard, but also apply, here's Black America. And here's being Black in America. Right. And that's why they say all education has a political element to it. Because if I know this and I'm aware, like, yo, folks gonna be trying to get these. We're talking about liberation. This company's trying to liberate that change out of that kid's pocket. That's and my mom used to say, like, she was like, they trying to see how fast they can get that out of your pocket. That's their whole game. How quickly can they get that penny out of your pocket? And so, yeah, as you said, as a parent, like we're saying all kind of things, teaching them. No, we're not buying this. We're looking at the bulk rate of this, all of that, right? Like, I hated having no frills, but she's like, it's the same thing. You know, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, but that would say no frills. That would say Kellogg. You know what I mean?
What is the class that you think you teach this in? Do you teach this in social studies or math? Or reading? Like, where's the appropriate place to drop this lesson?
That's the beauty of it, Chris. This lesson can be threaded throughout all those classes. Certainly a math class. But if I'm in social studies and I'm teaching whatever it is, I can bring mathematics in, right? Like, I was a literature and history teacher. Like, all of this was threaded. My principal would come observe me, and sometimes he would whisper, he's like, is it social studies or is it English? I'm like, it's both. And like, they're inseparable, right? Because how I chose to teach English always had a historical element in it. And history, obviously, we were reading and writing and speaking and looking at primary documents. So we're also looking at grammar and things like that as we're writing and reading about it. So the beauty of it is but it starts beyond that. Forget the subject. It's what's the teachers and the educators' mindset and orientation. If you have the right mindset and orientation, you're going to be, this is all threaded in without the dogma, without like, oh, this is that, this, and you need to stop it. Don't do, like, no, just teaching, just teaching.
I mean, this would be hard for me, Sharif, just because being my age, the hard part for me is I've got multiple kids right now. Kids want a lot of things. They want. I think there's lots of excess, even amongst what we consider to be American poor kids. There's what I consider to be gross capitalistic excess, right? You have kids walking around with iPhones who can't afford anything else. You have grown folk who are in their young 20s who have cars that are big, beautiful, nice, whatever. I mean, like this came up for me also with the commercial you and I have talked about previously with Nia Long. She does a commercial for the Escalade, for the Cadillac Escalade. And I thought, oh, damn, that looks like nice. And the car does look nice. It's beautiful.
Yeah, a lot of those cars look beautiful, man.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. And she's driving through and she's talking in her Nia Long voice. And she just sounds like a homegirl, like any person in our circle that we would know, someone who works for you, someone that works with me, someone who's a colleague or whatnot, of our age, like a normal Black person, right? Just like she's not trying to talk as a star. That car is over $100,000, right? $110,000. It's a $110,000 vehicle. And me thinking about, I can't think of a dumber investment. There are people driving this very specific brand of vehicle who make like $70,000, $80,000 a year, right? You make 70 or 80K and you're driving 100 and 110,000 car, probably on lease. That lease payment, the average lease payment is getting somewhere to be about $1,200 to $1,400 a month, which astounds me. Like, who the hell is spending rent money, like mortgage money on vehicles? Now, I'm not thinking of this as a purchase because I love cars. I am a car person. I love them. And I would love that Escalade. Let me tell you right now. That thing is beautiful. That's the type of thing that they roll Obama around in, right? But when I think about 110K on something that depreciates by like 30 to 40%, that moment you drive off the lot, right? So you've already just lost $40,000 that you're still paying for once you drive off the lot, right? Now this is old man talking. This is old man talking. Like I
You
can't
sound
tell
like a
my
math.
kids to do
You
something.
sound like a mathematician to me.
An old mathematician. No, I
You
mean,
sound like a
because
math.
like
I mean, but the
you
idea
know,
of depreciation, even sharing with a child, like here are the things that that appreciate. Here are the things that depreciate. And what's a normal cycle? Like how long? And what's the best investment? This is all. It could be done in. This could be a case study, like reading an article of, hey, here's what happened. Here's this person. Here are their choices. It could be set up in social studies, more of a economics, like why is it built this way? Why are the things that are, what's the marketing to do with this, and how have things been marketed? Like, look, we did a lesson with our kids on the impact of tobacco. And this was something that they were curious about. And this was back when everybody's like, oh, kids stop smoking, blah blah blah. They were using fines if you all this kind of stuff, all the policy and attention headline seeking stuff. Kathy Lee at Turner Middle School, one of my mentor teachers, designed a unit, and then we all contributed because we're all like, rotating our students. So the impact of tobacco in Black America. This is 8th graders, mind you. Impact of tobacco. We couldn't teach that lesson without talking about economics and marketing, right? We ended up going down to George Washington's plantation so they could see one tobacco farm. No, nobody had seen a tobacco plant before, right? No, this was before we had computers in our classroom, so no one had seen an actual tobacco plant. We designed a unit where we start in Virginia and move up because they were like, why are all these ads, and then we take them. Here's our community with every other billboard with a Newport, somebody looking cool, a Nia, it wasn't Nia, but right, a Nia looking person with a daggone death stick hanging out her mouth and beckoning to the child like, yo, you want to be down with this?
Why you gotta be with the death stick? I smoked for years, man. I was a smoker for several years. Not even several. I was a smoker for a long time. You need to stop now.
but then going down and see, but we couldn't talk about this without like you were always tied to this. And when they couldn't make money off you growing it at the level that they were when these plantations, when they saw like the vastness of a plantation, right? Because they see farm, but they see pictures, it's a cow there, this there. When they could see, like, it was almost like an ocean where you couldn't stop seeing, like, these crops landed to the other side of the horizon, right? Like you couldn't see, where does this end? I'm like, this is what a plantation looked like back then. And they weren't trying to do the work. They were trying to think about how to make money off of this without lifting a finger besides a pen and a whip.
Without lifting their own fingers.
Yeah, it was just a pen and a whip. That's how, when they lifted their finger, it was a pen to write the cost of it, to sell you or to sell it, and a whip to make sure that they were able to do both, right? And so them being able to see that, and then see the billboard and see the connection, the mindset was still, you know what I mean? Like Huey Newton once, he was like, I don't know if he was critiquing, but he was kind of critiquing James Baldwin because he said, James Baldwin said United States didn't know what to do with the Black population once they were no longer a source of wealth. But they still are a source of wealth. It looks differently. You're like, it looks differently. They're still the source of wealth. That's 70 billion. Hip hop, like all the things that they say, like, hey, become a consumer of, even the things that you create, you no longer sell. We're going to sell it for you, and you're going to buy what you created. Like that, if that ain't the most gangsterish stuff.
Well, I mean, I've like, the piece that I wrote about Black children on the new cotton.
Yeah.
I think fits in that idea, Sharif, because it's like, you're no longer a slave. So slave was a way to make wealth off of a people, steal their labor, extract their labor, steal it, whatever. Okay, cool. Once you can no longer do that, though, they actually found another way still to enslave you. They passed ordinances that said you had to have a job. And locally, the only jobs you could get were on a plantation. So, right, like, so they still found another way.
We're going to funnel you right back into that space.
And when they couldn't do that anymore, they found a way to say, well, prisoners are not like free people. So prisoners can be leased out to be slaves.
Mhm.
So then there was a slave leasing program, basically. And, you know, once you get out of doing that, you find other ways. One of the ways now, I say American school children are a commodity in that. That's why people are fighting to keep their head count in certain schools. It's not because they want or love those kids. It's because those kids, their head count is what generates revenue for an entire class of middle class worker. Middle class people are deeply invested in keeping your body in a building, whether they are doing anything for your brain or not. They don't have to. That's the beauty of Black students. The beauty of them is you can capture them and you don't have to do anything for them. Right. It's just their body that generates per pupil income, and everybody's living off of that. But that's just, I mean, private prisons have a similar business model, but so do public prisons. When you try and change laws about public prisons, the economic thing kicks in, and prison guards go up to the Capitol and say, we don't want to reduce the number of prisoners. So we don't want you legalizing anything that will reduce. So they still find ways.
Bruh, I mean, and double down on that,
you know.
right? Like, because that idea of a prison guard having lobbyists, like
I know.
They got lobbyists.
They got lobbyists who, so, you know,
who's the black child lobbyist? Like, where are the black children lobbyists? And do they get to talk to them? Do they get to talk to their lobbyists? And then a lot of people are like, well, the elected class is no. Who do the black kids talk to about? Here's the conditions that I live in inside a school.
Right.
Who's talking about that?
This is the first time that I encountered this idea that we just talked about, the lobbyists of the prison guards or whatnot. There was a story in Mother Jones magazine, and there was a picture of Black women protesting outside of a prison in California. And one of the signs said, "My child is not your paycheck." And they were there to protest the prison guards who were trying to push 3 strikes and you're outlaws. So the prison guards were lobbying for 3 strikes laws to go into effect, meaning, you know, on your 3rd offense or whatever, you go to jail forever type of thing. Like that's a life sentence, automatic life sentence. And that all hit me. Like, so you have Black moms outside of a prison with these signs, and one of them says, "My child's not your paycheck." And it was literally because the state workers were lobbying to keep more of us in jail. That told me this whole story about we are an economy. Like Black people or bodies, just our bodies is an economy. So getting back to our, like, you know, materialism, like we don't want to teach our kids to be a commodity. We don't want to teach them to be a commodity in education or in the judicial system. Entire police departments actually have militarized themselves by earning extra money by fining us for crazy things. Like fines have generated the weapons that they now use, which gives them even more incentive to bust our door downs with no warrant walks, no knock warrants, warrants, you know. And so it's all like this crazy industry. And then on top of all of that, the music our kids listen to, the media that they consume, all of it is teaching them to have shifty values of just consume. You'll be a better person if you have better shoes, if you have better pants, if you have the right hairstyle, if you walk the right way, if you talk the right way. In prep for today, I found some stats. One of them that says that 75% of United States tweens, which is 8 to 12, have already decided that they want to be rich in their life, and that's one of their primary goals. It's a very high number. 61% of them want to get.
Did they say that high? Did they say anything about how high, like comparatively?
This one doesn't say comparative, but this is some of the other stats are comparative in how much they know about finance. So I'll get that in a second. So 75% of them want to be rich one day. 61% of them want to get there by being famous, right? So they're connecting. I want to be famous. So fame comes with all the cosmetic things that you do, but we're not teaching them any of the work that it took. So you might want to be a famous singer, but I'm teaching you nothing about the recording industry. I'm not teaching you how the people make their money, and you're signing bad contracts, for instance. Right. So they want the outcome. We're not teaching them the steps how to get there. Here's a few stats from a piece called the Case for High School Financial Literacy. The number of financial decisions an individual must make continues to increase, and the variety and complexity of financial products continues to grow. Young people don't often understand debit and credit cards, mortgages, banking, investment, and insurance products and services, payday lending, rent-to-own products, credit reports, credit scores, etc. Right? Now, there's a class of people, young people, who know all these things because they are born into families and parents where this is how their world works, and this is how they have what they have. And unfortunately, this is not our kids. Imagine going through 12 years of preparation for life. 12, 13 years. Let's just call it 13 years. 13 years in the hands of professionals every year who are supposed to teach you something about the world that you live in and prepare you for life. And the main things that are going to govern whether or not you're going to be rich or poor, or even middle class: debit, credit cards, mortgages, banking, investment, insurance products, services, avoiding payday lending, outrageous, knowing how to calculate interest and being able to say to a payday loan person, well, that sounds stupid. Like when they tell you what the interest is right now, the rent to own folks, like the folks who sell you a TV, you can have this TV if you only pay $25 a month. You can have it now for $25 a week for the rest of your life. And this is going to be a $20,000 TV that you could buy for Best Buy for like, $1,200 probably. Many students do not understand one of the most important financial decisions they will make in their lives is choosing whether they should go to college after high school, and if they decide to pursue additional education, what field to specialize in. So all this conversation we're having about students being saddled in $200,000 of debt, $100,000 to $200,000 or whatnot. We're graduating people without ever having told them how that even works. And that's immediately after high school. Something like 69% of kids are enrolling in college now, which is a very high number. It doesn't mean they're going to finish, but enrolling right after high school. Imagine going right from 12th grade to 13th grade without anybody advising you that you're about to take on a crazy amount of debt for no reason, for a degree that's going to do nothing for you. Why are we?
And you're going to pay it back for them.
And maybe
that's a different show.
I was about to say maybe we are. I don't understand.
No, I'm talking about like the taxes, right? Like somebody's paying all that back. Somebody's that was the big pushback. Like, wait a minute, I'm working. That's what the ads are now. Like, you did this. You're working in the minefield. I'm in a minefield, in a mine. Or as a plumber, you didn't go to college basically, and you're paying. The one commercial, like, you're paying for it, is in Pennsylvania. They're making you pay for this blue-haired
barista.
Barista. And, I was like, oh my God, like, talk about like trying to paint it in one specific particular way. But a lot of people were just like, yeah, why am I paying for that?
Well, I mean, and to be very honest with you, I don't know why I'm paying for that. Like, it's not because I have some right-wing thing in me. It's just you went to school for 12 years. And you took on, I mean, let me just be harsh about it. You signed a very stupid document under a very stupid premise. And I don't say it that way to be insulting. I say it that way to say, even if it's not your fault, it's a stupid arrangement. The idea that you will spend years and years of your life paying a loan that almost never goes down, even though there are people, I've seen stories of people whose interest is so stupid, so crazy stupid, that they've paid almost what they owe, and they owe much,
and they already paid. Yeah. I mean, and on the other side of that, man, it's like, my thing is, when banks, when the automobile, when all these other things, like, they get that type of bailout, so I'm just like, all right. So yes, even the purple-haired girl that's a barista, like, yeah, Wall Street makes a bunch of bad decisions, and as a country, as a society, we say, hey, it's better as a country if there is some type of bailout for this. I don't agree with all of it, right? Like, with some of it, and then I also think about myself, man. I was 16.
Wait, let's just stop there for just 1 second. Let's just stop on that for a second. Because we bailed out all these industries when Obama came in, but all those industries paid back the money that we bailed them out with interest. People don't talk about that second part. Yeah, they did. We literally made money out. See, it's funny, our narratives, half the story is not being told about that. We bailed them out, but those weren't free money. That wasn't free money. They paid that, at least the Obama bailouts, and he is the biggest bailer outer of all the bailer
all the
outers,
bailer
right? Yeah,
outers.
all the bailer outers.
But if we looked at all the times
they paid their money back, we get our money back from, and we get it back in different ways. We only bail those companies out because of the number of people they employ. Right. Like, so they're
I get that. It's better for society,
it's
right?
better
like,
for us overall if we bail them out. It is not better for us to allow people to keep signing stupid contracts that put them in $200,000 of debt each and then bail that out without ever like restructuring. Why did you like, there's some questions we're missing. Why is the interest structured that way? Why is there any interest at all on a government, loan for education, like, or even private loans for education? Why does it even exist? Why is that even a market?
But as a teacher, then what's the purpose of government? If the government is to make people's lives better, why are people even being marketed something, right? Like, because it's almost like what'd you call it before, like same day loan or
payday lending.
Payday lending, right? Like, it's in a similar vein of how do I become a vulture for my own people? The idea of a government trying to be a good steward for a country and say like, hey, we will all flourish if we have some checks and balances for a government, because this is great for an 8th grade. Like, how much, for a student, if I want them to think like, hey, how much invasion is it, like just free choice, or should it be some guardrails, right? Like, this is the kind of stuff I would want my middle school, even the elementary school student, like, how much would we come to agree, like, yes, I do want some type of I do want somebody watching my back when I'm on my way to college, if I'm my first generation, right? Like, and you could play all these scenarios and get them to start critically thinking about what type of society do they want and what do they want to critique, right? Because the idea like, oh yeah, you signed a bad contract and we're the government and we see it happening times billions, and we're actually going to support them in a way of like, like when I read years ago, like when credit ratings actually came about, I just thought that had always existed. Like, no,
that's new. Yeah, that's newer.
That didn't always exist, right? Like, and so when you're seeing how all this puzzle fits together, and this goes back to what Joanne just said, like, if we're not teaching our students, like if I was still in the classroom and I'm teaching social studies or economics or government or history, all of this, capitalism is going to be threaded throughout. Like, hey, here's when, and I forget what else was tied. Something was tied to the credit score that showed like, oh, this was a backdoor deal. Like, oh, they're doing that. Let's apply this. And then we can make interest. Oh, if you score here, then your interest is going to be here, right? Like, not low. It's the opposite of what you would, kind of think. Like, oh, if you're struggling more, then all right, we're going to like, nah. You're a risk. And so we're going to make sure we triple or quadruple our money because you're a risk. Like, that's predatory.
Well,
and
I mean,
what role is the government in all of that space?
So it seems to me that a lesson plan for this on materialism, consumerism, and capitalism, a lesson plan would need to have some higher level lessons just about government and banking but
it still goes back to your mindset and orientation too, right, Chris? Because if you're thinking about this as a Black person or
any person, but yeah, I think like as Black people, definitely if there's like if there was a Black pedagogy about this, we would have to start with the state of the world and the history of how does government interact with this? How does commerce interact with this? All these things that we consume and that we buy or whatnot come from somewhere. Let's talk about that a little bit. So a lot of this to me would fit into the more foundational understanding of the thing, but then you would have to get to a part of the lesson plan that was also about the practicalities of how this shows up in your life too. So so all the other stuff, to me is foundational. This is the theoretical, philosophical kind of background history, all that stuff into one ball. And then the next thing would be like, you have to apply it to relevant contemporary times. And part of that would be like, this is how the credit system works, right? And this is why you don't sign X, or this is why you calculate interest, and this is how you calculate interest. Those things this whole thing that we talk about counselors all the time about how few of them we actually have. I was just always taught that like people go to college do well in life. I wasn't taught that you have to be more specific than that. So my oldest, if you were to talk to him, my thing was just like, you going to college, you going to college. But I didn't get more specific than that. I didn't like, it was just like, you got to go to college, right?
Right,
That was the
yeah.
assumption. But when he turned 18, I wrote him a letter from his dad saying, this is the way that I understand the world right now. You're a man now, but this is how I understand, and you're going to learn more than I know. But I did in that. If you were to ask him, you go back and look at the letter I wrote him when he was 18. I talked about credit score only because I had bad credit at one time. And and no one had taught me about how credit works or whatnot. So I put in this letter to him, guard your credit like you're guarding your life, because in this country, it's actually how people decide what they're going to give you or not give you in a lot of important cases, whatever. And I didn't even know the whole story about it. I was just telling him things I had learned.
And this was in the 90s. You were sharing that.
Well, when he turned 18, so it was, in the tens, so I shared that with him, not as a lesson that I knew to teach for any other reason, except for I knew how it showed up in my life. Like I had made some stupid decisions. I had signed for, we did when he was young, I did Rent-A-Center, right? I look back now and I think about, it sounded like such a good deal. I just paid this one fee and I had like a whole apartment of furniture.
Yeah. Like, you're just like, I'm just paying this because you're looking at, but that's also part of the education. Like you're looking at that month, right?
Yeah.
And it also speaks to,
not because even that month, Sharif, it's by week.
Oh, it's by week. Oh, wow.
Weekly.
Well, here's something. So you did it.
You're like, on payday, I earn like, $240. And I only have to give you 60 of it, and I get a whole house of stuff.
And I furnished a whole, bruh. Well, the other side of that, and we're about the same age. I wanted Rent-A-Center. I thought that was like fair. I couldn't even afford that. Like, I couldn't even afford that. Like, as a kid, like I'm just like, damn, wouldn't that be awesome if I could use Rent-A-Center to furnish our spot? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like. It's all of that, combined. And when you talk about like the credit card, and I think this goes back to like the parenting and the lessons and the teaching. I think as parents, I think we have to go deeper than what we typically may have traditionally gone as Black parents. We'll say, don't do it. Why? Because I said so, or just don't do it. Just listen. Like, you know what I mean? And listening and understanding are two different things. Right. Like I listening and hearing. And I think sometimes we tell our children something, just expecting them to hear and obey, not understanding like there's a deeper, for us to really conceptualize something. It's like teaching math, and you have all these kids who can pass the multiple choice, but when it's actually written out as a problem, they don't understand it. Right. And so sometimes like our parenting is like that. Like their life is going to be full of word problems, but we've really only set them up to pass the multiple choice stuff. Don't do drugs. Yeah, here's drugs. Do it. Yes, no. Where the word problem is, how do you apply that when your peer pressure is this, or the girl that you are infatuated with is handing you a joint, or like that's the word. You know what I mean? Not just because I was told don't go to credit card. Not like interest or this, or showing like, hey, if they're going to come to you like this, so this is how it's going to show up, right. And so I ended up getting a credit card in college. I'm 17. I got a credit card. I'm 16. I got a credit card. Like, yeah, because they were outside of the student center, and I was like, damn, I can call with a calling card, bro. And I was like, damn, my mom's in Iran. I don't have to pay. And just sign this, and I get a credit card with $500 and a calling card where I could call my. So I got it, and of course that joint ended up paying. Then the bill started coming. I'm like, wait a minute, like, right, like, and I'm like, and of course my peeps are like, didn't I tell you not to get a credit card? I'm like, yeah, but it's the word problem of life that showed up.
And you getting it then is not a problem. One, if you are educated with some strategies, right?
I ain't had no strategies, man.
You didn't have them. And I remember this at the University of Minnesota, there was like these tables that Discover and other people would set up. And as they were walking by, they were damn near
That was
like
my first
handing out.
joint, Discover.
Yeah, they were just like, Discover was like one of the big ones. And you're just like, here, have a Discover card. And in some cases, it was only like an $800 credit limit, but it was like, you got a card now type of thing. And the strategy of teaching a young person to get a card like that and pay it off every month with no balance, keep no balance, never.
But that's what I mean by the word problem. Is it was just like, don't get a credit card, instead of like, hey, here's the system, here's those are two different lessons. Just don't get no credit card, boy. They're gonna like, those are two different things. And again, it's like your orientation of like, hey, I'm gonna teach you about capitalism. You are going to be, you know what I mean? And it could still be like, don't get one, but here's all the reasons why. Or if you get one, and we're going to get it together so you understand this is how it plays out. And I think, like we have to, there's a continuum of teaching. Yeah. Because some say, I told you not to get it. I told you not to get it, right? Well, like that's teaching, but there's a deeper, more sophisticated way that sets me up. And I just wasn't financially literate. I told you before, my first, I had a scholarship, fortunately. So I didn't have all those loans and stuff. But bro, my refund check, I bought a daggone Cayman. Like I was just like, oh, we're gonna fit this apartment for about Cayman's like an alligator. Yeah, that's what we're gonna get, right? Like that's a dumb investment. You know what I mean? In some ways,
you said it early in this show. There's a lot of predatory capitalism that is predicated on bad fees, bad contracts, bad deals for people who don't know better or people in poverty, because it's a market. That has always been a market, like try and sell something. I'm going to send you after this show, and for people listening and watching, I will put it out into social media. There's a video from like the 60s, late 50s, I think it's late 50s or early 60s, called How to Sell the Negro. And the entire piece is a government created piece on how you sell to Black consumers. And it's got the craziest kind of like advice in it about how we could be sold on brand names. And it's because we associate personal worth and clout and conviction and being as equal to white people in brands. So you can sell us brands in ways that you can't sell to white people, because white people already know that they're supreme. They don't need a Mercedes, for instance. Black people are some of the biggest buyers of Mercedes-Benz. We're some of the biggest buyers of stupid alcohol, like alcohol that is not nearly as good as anybody claims that it is, but its price is inflated to seem like it's premium. And all you have to do is fake premium something. And we're there as consumers because we have this kind of hidden need to want to feel just as good as. I believe we're passing.
We'll defeat racism. So. We'll defeat racism through classes, right? Like, you know what I mean? So we're just like, if we can elevate ourselves.
I don't even think it's the thought about defeating racism. I think it's I personally.
No, that's what I mean. My negative sense of self, racial identity.
Right.
I can deal with that internally by showing like I'm a class above, right? Like I'm stepping up in a class structure. I can buy the Mercedes. So even if I know that there's racism around, like, look at
the whole world is laughing at you. I hate to say this at the end of the show, but getting towards the end here, the whole world is laughing at you. We shouldn't teach this to our children. It's actually kind of cultural suicide and really stupid. But I, having people show up in $1,000 shoes and tags all over them. This is Gucci. This is Burberry. This is that. All these kind of European white names on their bodies, all over their bodies, like a goddamn NASCAR kind of consumerist person is really
funny. All the labels.
Yeah, you got all the labels. You got like Calvin Klein.
I'm gonna start calling folks like that. You look like a NASCAR driver.
You look like an ass car is what you look like. You just look like something that somebody has attached all these European names and labels, and they're laughing at you. You are an industry. You are literally tattooing on your body the idea of consumerist stooge. You are not getting richer from it. You think you're looking high and fine and mighty as possible. And then on top of all of this, Sharif, this is where the lesson is really stupid, because wealthy people, and I know wealthy people now like I've never known before, and I've interacted with wealthy people, and they're labelless, like no label situation. I told this story a few days ago. actually, and I'll tell it just quickly. Very, very, very wealthy person that I met that I didn't know was wealthy at all. Served on a board with, offered me a ride, and I'm a car person. I love cars. I love nice cars. Like, it's a thing that I really love. I don't have one, but I really love them. And as I'm sitting in his car and we're talking, and he's just talking, he's just shooting the crap with me, right? And I'm looking around the car and I'm figuring out I don't know what kind of car this is. And that never happens to me because, number one, first of all, cars have badging. So you can just look at a badge. You can look for a badge. You'll find one quickly. I never sit in a car and not know that it's a Chevy or a Ford or a Mercedes or a Infiniti or whatever it might be, right? Like a Porsche. They have, some of the cars have smells to them. I can smell a VW. Like when I get in a VW, VWs have a very distinctive smell across all of their lines. I don't know if you know this, like, but if you've ever sat in a VW or owned one, they have a smell to them. But I couldn't figure out what this car was. And it turns out the reason I couldn't figure out what this car was like, there's only like 8 to 10 of them made a year type of thing or whatnot. This is like like what sheiks do. And it is not all badged up with all kinds of like fancy stuff in it or whatnot, right? And this person who I'm talking about, their clothing was not all badged up or whatever. Now, I'm sure this person is wearing a $600, $700, $800 t-shirt that looks like a t-shirt. There's no badging on it though. There's no like Calvin Klein, Dior. There's nothing on it that gives you any type of like, look at me. As a matter of fact, it's the complete opposite. This is such good material. And this is so like, such a flex that I don't even need to.
It's not going to shrink after a couple washes, kind of thing.
No, on the 80th wash, it's going to look like you bought it the first day you bought it or whatnot.
Right.
But it's such a flex that I don't even have to, like, I have so much money, I don't even have to brag about it. I don't even want you to know. You can't get this shirt, right? That's how rich people are. Phony rich people, petty bourgeois people actually need all the labels and the symbols or whatnot. I don't mind that. I'm not trying to be judgmental. I don't mind that if you are building something in your children that teaches them not to be poor and stooges in the future. If you're teaching them, like, listen, if you've got excess cash and you want to badge yourself up like that, fine. But okay, this is what I'm going to say bad. I'm going to leave it alone. But you wearing all of this nonsense on your body. You got like $1,000 a year in nails. And you've got like all these European names and designers, and your bag is more expensive in some cases in some people's mortgage, right? And then you're sitting in rooms talking about your oppression, and you were talking about your oppression, and you look stupid. I am sorry, but you have been taught all the wrong things. Number one, first of all, buy some Target clothes, right?
Buy some land.
Buy some land. Buy something that doesn't depreciate when you drive it off of the lot. I know, come on, honey. I know that your Affinity or your Lexus tells people that you're doing okay in life. I know that. That Lexus ain't worth a damn thing in comparison to, and I should have thought about it for this show. There's a Black Homeschoolers Collective on Instagram. If you follow them, there's a Black educator who became a millionaire at like 41 or 42 or something like that, bought 40 acres in Montana, now lives on it with her kids, is debt free.
Yeah, thanks for sending me that. Yeah.
I send it to you.
And she used to be in debt before or something, right? Like, she went on some Dave Ramsey type of mission to number one, clear up all of her debt, and number two, then buy some land that she's going to pass on to her kids. And now her whole family, Black family, living on 40 acres, get your mind around that, are living on 40 acres debt free. So all the money waiting for those 40 acres, getting those 40 acres.
Got the 40 acres. And that to me is the difference in the lesson. That's a more positive place to land. Earlier in the show, we talked about the mom who bought her kids a vending machine for Christmas, and she got criticized for it.
You didn't say what the criticism, or at least put the link in the thing so people can read it later too, because I'm curious about the criticism part.
Yeah, and I think part of the criticism is it's Christmas. I mean, you're supposed to buy your kids toys. You're not supposed to buy them,
investment
like a vending, like, what kid wants to unwrap a vending machine, right?
Man,
I would have.
Like if somebody would have given me that back in the day, man, I would have put that joint.
You would have put it where?
in my school, outside my school, in the teacher's lounge, like, you know what I mean, across the street from the, like yeah, as a kid, like, man, that's, and like you said, you
Yeah.
could put it almost anywhere. You know what I mean?
I feel like the better lesson, and I shouldn't went on so long with the negative. The better lesson is the vending machine mom. The better lesson is the Black educator mom who is now debt free with kids that are running free now. She doesn't
And
have. She's
land,
not
and
stressed. She
land,
got the land. She got 40
40
acres.
acres, like, you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like with kids,
yeah.
right? Like, oh, you know, and my college roommate, you know, they live right outside of Philadelphia. You know, and the parents had a huge yard. He, they were like, he was looking for a house builder. They're like, just build a house on the land. And you know, I was
Yeah.
just like, that's amazing. Like, yeah, like just and that's what he did. He built this. I'm talking about like not only intergenerationally, but his parents had invested in a type of space, you know. And I've never seen him in any, you know, $100,000 car, whatever, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
Like
well,
they were
then he
like,
ain't worth nothing.
yeah,
Come on,
exactly.
man.
But now he has and so their grandkids are in the plot of land that they invested in. Like, talk about generational
Yeah.
impact. And I just thought, like, wow, that's amazing. Like, you know, that's amazing.
And here's the sister for everybody who wants to know. We were just talking about her name is Pamela Smith. She's an entrepreneur, and listen to her profile there, right? You know, like debt-free millionaire, homeschool mompreneur, owns 46 acres of land. And what you can see is in her feed, a lot of it is about the lifestyle that she's been afforded now. That you know, she's freed herself of debt and bad business decisions and not owning anything.
I want to
And now
visit there.
what's that?
I've always wanted to visit Montana,
Montana.
Wyoming.
Yeah.
I want to go fishing out there, actually. So
I don't know if it's like a place that I've always wanted to go, but I will say this much, you know, like the idea of finding a place, she was living in a place where the same amount of money wouldn't have bought her very much. So the idea of finding the places in the United States where you could go and live the bigger lifestyle, we have too many people that feel like the arc of success is getting your little shitty condo in some urban city like, you know, Los Angeles or San Francisco or someplace where you're going to be house poor is what you're going to be. You're going to be like house rich in a way, but you're going to get the Uber delivers food on a regular basis. You're going to have a certain lifestyle, but her lifestyle is actually ensuring that her kids are actually not going to enter life in debt of any sort, right? We still have people dying and their kids don't know how to pay for funerals, which is a problem, right? This is you know, this is something we live with. The bottom line is it doesn't have to be that way. This isn't just about ripping on people. This is about what's the educative process that they can help us out of this. Anyway, Sharif, as always, you helped me unpack. What's your final word on this? Like the teaching our kids about materialism, consumerism, and capitalism.
Yeah, I would say this all ties back to, you know, I don't think you can have a sound education without the educators having a political orientation. And I'm not talking about Republican, Democrat, Green Party politics, although that may play into it. I'm talking about just a political orientation of, as Dr. Greg Card talks about often, like, how do you see yourself? How do you see each other, and how do others see you, are all part of the education, and particularly when you talk about economics. And I can't help but to think of how schools, and as well as places adjacent to schools, right? Because this could be community center. This is why I love Reconstruction.us so much. These are the type of things that you know, Kaya Henderson and her team are teaching. Like, hey, even if it's not in your school, we're gonna have a master. Everybody talking about master class. Well, the students are getting master classes on things that may not necessarily find their way into schooling, but it is part of the education of children. And particularly when we think about Huey Newton and this all, you know, tying this all up, where he said youths are passed through schools that don't teach, then forced to search for jobs that don't exist, and finally left stranded in the street to stare at the glamorous lives advertised around them, not lived around them, the glamorous lives advertised around them. And how much that's basically catching a fish on a baited hook. And how often our children are not set up to view like that's a baited hook. They think that's the glamour that I want. That's it. Let's teach our children to avoid that baited hook. It looks amazing. Don't fall for the bait, right? Like, and again, it's not just, again, we always talk about it at the center. It's not just the child. If we educate them well, we're impacting that student's grandchildren and beyond, right? Like, and that's how we have to approach education. What's going to set up not just the student for now, what's going to set them up so that their grandchildren thrive? That's a different orientation. And you can't think about someone's grandchildren without thinking about what's the economic and political aspect of and how does all of that tie into the educational process that we're supposed to provide.
I think that's great advice. Is you're not just educating a kid, you're educating a community, you're educating a race, you're educating for the future, you're educating for liberation. Like it's more than teaching a kid. So my frame around how do we teach our young people about materialism, consumerism, and capitalism, the only reason to do that is not just to give them a lesson about those concepts. It's actually to give them a lesson that frees them and their people and their families from right now, where we are right now, which is we are very much prey. We are not the predator. We are the prey of capitalist systems. And there are people making money off of us and living off of us in so many ways. And we're a good cash crop. Like when I say that Black kids are the new cotton, Black people are the new cotton, and we are a good cash crop. We actually are. You can tell us that something makes us look, feel, or sound better, and we will buy it. And we're some of the biggest. We're some of the biggest kind of consumers of household cleaning products, of soap, of many cosmetics. And cosmetics is such a good one, to think about because. Look good, feel good, smell good, sound good, whatever. We have been told in so many ways that we are not any of those things, that we make a bumper crop when it comes to selling us any of those products. And unfortunately, I'm sad to see it start early with our young people, with our kids. I see babies with like crazy brands on them who don't have a baby bond, don't have a 504 or whatever the different kind of college planning products are. And there's no good reason for us to keep graduating kids that don't understand debt, credit, banking, interest loans, student loans. The very first one they encounter is that student loan one. We really got to interrupt that process. We have got to interrupt that process. 12th grade should have like a financial defense course, like defend yourself.
I like that financial defense course.
Yeah, financial defense. 12th grade, mandatory. And you know what? When I talk about mandatory, I don't mean like state. I just mean even like churches, community-based organizations should be like, who's our seniors this year? In this city, we're going to talk to seniors. Defend yourself next year, because next year you filling out FAFSAs and everything else right now. Let us defend you. This is like a home buying decision almost. For some of them, the documents they're going to sign is like a mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, a mortgage.
Yeah. At night, can you imagine, Sharif? 19, you're supposed to make some mortgage decision.
Yeah.
With no help. All right. Well, listen, friends and family, thank you for joining us. We're so happy to be back for another.
Yes.
We were gone for a while. We are back now. This has been another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you are freer after this hour with Sharif and me. We'll see you next week for another Freedom Friday. Thank y'all.
Peace.